Good morning, everybody.
Morning, here in Descendo and also on Zoom. And today is a very special day because my wife, now Kokyo, had her first Dharma talk today in Vienna. And 6 hours before mine. Yeah. And I think they are online. Maybe. Yes. And so welcome to my sixth talk. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So good. You see, we have all fun together. Yeah, okay. Last time I ended with the Vijnanas and how the five skandhas get filled with this thing, what we call me or I. Buddha analyzed that we perceive as a creation of a self is a compilation of 5 aggregates, the skandhas. And he said, when these 5 aggregates are there, there is a person. When these disappear, there is no longer that person. Literally translated, the words skandha in Sanskrit and khandha in Pali have 5 meanings. The first is bulk, the second is the trunk of the body or of a tree, the third is mass, the fourth is a section or chapter, and the fifth is the sensorial aggregates which condition the appearance of life in any form. And now we define the skandhas as first, the rupa or form or materiality, second, vedana, sensation or feeling, third, samnya, perception, fourth, samskara, mental formations or embodied conditioning or association or impulses, and the fifth, vijnana, consciousness. And they are an important part of the Abhidharma in Pali Canon. In my first Sangha, it was taught that the skandhas happen in ascending order from the first from the form, then the sensation, and so up to the consciousness, and so one gives rise to the other, which is true in a certain way. On the one hand, this is very logical and sounds very good at the first moment, but I think there is also a contradiction with principles of our teaching. When everything is empty in principle and there is nothing before the phenomena arises, everything exists simultaneously and co-arises. And when everything is impermanent, there can be no order, and so this is the other side of the skandhas. It is difficult for us and our logic thinking to imagine that everything happens at the same time and is there all at once, and it only depends on where we direct our attention in this moment. Dwelling in ambiguity. This is what we learn from our practice, from sitting in this upright posture. Ambiguity comes from the Latin word ambiguitas, which means double meaning or many meanings. But we humans love unambiguity. We want something we can rely on, something that gives us stability, something that we can believe in. Living in the paradox, not one, not two, means to live between the two truths, the relative and the absolute. It is the attempt to understand the paradox of life. To understand the opposite is the basis of our bodhisattva vows, not the uniformity of the world, which we like so much. The term paradox comes from the Greek word para and means beyond, and from dokein, which means to think. So paradox means beyond thinking. So today in my talk, I start top down with the 5 skandhas. The consciousness, and then there is no chronological way down. We jump to the third, the perception, and afterwards to the first, the form, and then later we come to the fourth and the second. I know this might be a little bit confusing, but I do it because the second and the fourth skandha are very important. And like I said before, there is no order. Let's start now from the back of the list of the skandhas with the consciousness. I have already talked about consciousness in great detail, and one could think that Vijnanas are the explanation how the skandha consciousness arises. That would again be a very nice, simple explanation and reminds me of my time when I worked in chemistry and the explanation how atoms are built. But once more, it is the space in between that is important. And the Vijnanas are part of mostly every skandhas, as I understand it. But first I have to make a little side trip. A difficult one. I have talked so much about consciousness that I can't avoid to talk again about the scientific approach to consciousness, because this topic will become very important for everybody in the next years, just now when AI becomes so important. A Dharma friend of mine, who is a university professor of programming, philosophy of science and mechatronics, has worked for years in the field of prosthesis design and the connection of nerves with machines. He has talked a lot to ChatGPT and is fascinated. I'm not an enemy of ChatGPT in principle. This program is perfectly justified because no human can read all the AI has already read, and that will bring many advantages. And that can help us a lot in various areas, and I really think that this is true. But I think we have to be very careful here and take our time, and above all, we have to look closely to make sure that we make the right distinctions. For example, we should distinguish the knowledge that ChatGPT has from wisdom, even more from the wisdom that we talk about in Zen all the time. Or better say, the wisdom we cannot really talk about, the wisdom beyond wisdom. And can AI or a machine in general have consciousness? A machine does not breathe. There is no heartbeat and there is no homeostasis, which is the balanced state of physiological body functions, stability of ratio of blood pressure, body temperature, blood pH, and so on. The maintenance of homeostasis is controlled by the autonomic nervous system, so humans cannot willfully influence its regulation directly. In a machine, there is no such kind of interplay, and a machine cannot embody its phenomenal experience. It can therefore also not absorb chi. It is not alive. In a way, it is simply dead, and so not a sentient being. And when we talk about consciousness in Buddhism, we are talking about the conditioned consciousness of human beings, which means it is of the time always in delusion and not pure because of the mind poisons and all the karmic circumstances. But as human beings, we have the possibility to see our true nature because we have Buddha nature. This is why we have to practice. And how could AI do this? A robot with thinking beyond thinking or not thinking? So can AI or a machine with AI have consciousness? The kind of consciousness that I talked about in the last two lectures? The former guru boss of AI design said a few months ago that we have to talk about this, because in his research he came across something he would call consciousness. In the new theories of consciousness of neuroscientific approaches, which are based on an old idea, mostly on the fixed idea that everything must be measurable and intrinsic experiences is worth nothing as long as intrinsic experience does not result in a deflection in any scale, it is considered only minimal important, and even then only in the field of psychology. But for consciousness, there is no unit of measurement yet, and from my point of view, there never will be. At present, the whole story depends on the neuronal correlate, which is desperately researched. The neuronal correlate is the measurable brain activity that goes along with the process of consciousness. And that is what the research is pouncing on at the moment. Research which, by the way, is largely based on simulations and models. I would like to tell a story of a creature called the small round worm, Caenorhabditis habitat elegans, which has a tiny nervous system. It has 302 neurons and about 6,000 synapses. In humans, there are 100 billion neurons and several 100 trillion synapses. So in 25 years of research work, it has been possible to capture and depict this neuronal network system. But until today, nobody knows how it works. It is impossible to say why the worm moves or why it does not move at all. And then there is this no report phenomenon. This neuronal correlate is dependent on whether someone reports it or not. If it is subject to report it during one of these brain activity measurements, the activity is many times greater than if he only experiences. It's a big puzzle. And the next question we have to ask is, does AI have Buddha nature? What is the answer? Maybe you know the picture where Japanese priests bow in front of a Avalokiteshvara robot that is chanting the Heart Sutra. Does a robot have Buddha nature? This question was raised again this March by Recycle magazine, and immediately answered with a yes in an article by the Japanese author Mashiri Mori. He has been managing to place this question prominently in the Buddhist community again and again since the 70s, and answered is every time with yes, because he is subject to a fundamental misunderstanding. Every time he quotes Dogen Zenji from the fascicle Busho from Shubukenzo, he quotes a talk by Yuyan Iwasawa that everyone has Buddha nature. He makes the mistakes, as many do, of assuming that we have Buddha nature. And this is the great misunderstanding. Buddha nature is not a property, not something fixed like an organ or any other part of the body. We all have the ability to discover our Buddha nature. And through this discovery, we realize our true nature, but we don't own it. It is like a gateway that we can open, that we can approach through our practice. We can only be in Buddha nature. We cannot have it. And all the scriptures and the talks and discussions about Buddha nature are always about human beings, because only we have this overflowing mind that is so confused and blinded by our karmic conditioning. So we have to open up to our Buddha nature, and we cannot just be it, like most other beings, from sentient beings to mountains and rivers. And what is artificial intelligence again? It is conditioning par excellence. If you leave out all the conditioning, meaning the algorithms and deep learning and so on, or dissolve this, just as we human beings transform our deluded minds in our practice, what is left? So I think I don't have to say more. All this shows me that science and society have gone in a wrong direction, And this science discussion, scientists emphasizes a model of human being that works like a machine, an engine that is determined by laws that are clearly, linearly, stepwise, hierarchically structured, like early mathematics or physics. This is a world that is built in 3 dimensions and in a linear time. As I already said, the problem is called the tyranny of scientism, named so by a German scientist. So now enough by this issue. Let's talk about consciousness in the Skandhas. It's a creation very similar of that from the 7th Vijnana, the Manas Vijnana, like I explained in the last talk. The 5th skandha, consciousness, accepts the activities of each of the other skandhas as its objects. It can also recognize its own activities, as asserted by Xuan Zhang in the Yogacara, that consciousness recognizes itself. And this is very important. We can recognize or notice it, and especially observe how it arises, how it is composed of the individual skandhas and the other Vijnanas. Especially our ego-centered consciousness is important here. This spirit of observation is the awareness that we strengthen and emphasize in Zazen. We call it in German Gewahrsein, awareness. The roots here in German are the same like with the word Wahrnehmung, perception in German. It is take the truth. The difference between the 5th consciousness, the 5th skandha consciousness and the 3rd skandha perception is that in consciousness the object rules and in perception the subject rules. Perception recognizes the object, this distinguishes without discrimination, but consciousness is already the object. We identify ourselves with it. It has become mine. It includes the manas, the 7th Vijnana. This can be also translated as mine. And here we come straight to the 3rd skandha, perception. As we have already heard, our egocentricity forms this stream that we believe to be our life. René Descartes says already in the 7th century, I think, therefore I am. In the further course of his treatise, Descartes shows which understanding he has of nature. He regards living beings, including all animals, basically as machines, even if they are especially cleverly constructed machines. Humans are distinguished from animals because they have reason and language. Descartes calls his treatise on this topic meditation on first philosophy. But meditation here does not mean religious contemplation, as we understand it, but rather thinking. He talks about perception and that he already believed that many things in his perceptions were not true. Interesting, right? But he draws the wrong conclusions. For him, there is no true nature of things. And here Zazen and awareness of the mind offer a way out. We can dive into our stream of experience and notice how our mind arises in the sense of mind content, the first 6 Vijnanas. Like I said before, in German, there is the word Gewahrwerden, which means to become conscious of the truth. We open our mind another space, a field in which our awareness of the truth can appear. Our I steps back in the background. We no longer perceive ourselves only as I, but let our I appear and notice what arises. Like I said last time, there is this possibility of intuitive perception. In this physical process of letting the I in, one can also speak of incubating. We also notice our other sensory consciousnesses, the Vijnanas. We recognize how they are assembled, and then we can recognize the different levels of how we perceive. The longer we practice, the more we can learn to focus our attention on specific content and not just be the mercy of our karmic being anymore. For example, we can direct our attention to our breath and notice the life energy associated with this. In neuroscience, the self, the egocentricity, does not play a role. This is a job for psychology or philosophy. As explained before, neuroscience sees consciousness as a kind machine. So becoming conscious consists only of brain activity, of neuronal thunderstorms, which then spread into many regions of the brain and then become consciousness. That is one of the current theories. And now back to the third skandha, perception. In Sanskrit, samnya, which means that something comes into conceptualization. Sam means assembling or merging. Nya means knowing, and altogether the knowing that assembles. After the first skandha, the form, and the second, the sensations that can be pleasant, painful, or neutral, which, as we will see, is influenced by the fourth skandha, the mental sensation, the third skandha, assembles all previous elements. As a result, we perceive. That which appears is put in relation with other things. If we see something in a foreground, it is put in relation to the background. The space around is included. The conceptualities are assigned, like colors and sound. And the 10,000 things get labels. They are named. The thinking arises. Knowledge and associations or formations, the fourth skandha, are put together. Not knowing is gone, and we are back in the fifth skandha and have performed consciousness content. What arises first when the spark ignites? It is the form, rupa, so usually translated as form or matter. In most Indian thought, rupa denotes a materiality that can be sensed. For me, form is the manifestation of nature. In early texts, rupa refers to the four sensory faculties: soft, hard, liquid, solid, temperature, and movement, or better said, the four elements: earth, water, fire, and air, but not in a materialistic sense as we understand it today, but in the sense of how the fabric of the four elements becomes our being, how the world is composed out of the 10,000 things. In the Abhidharma, also called the pure phenomenology of consciousness, there are 6 classes and 52 subclasses. And as I said before, this is too detailed for me. For me, it is more important to explore how the spark can ignite and how it becomes a fire and turn into a spreading fire. But first, let's talk about the second skandha. And the second skandha is the sensation or feeling, Vedana in Sanskrit. It contains the 3 modalities through which we can cognize anything: as pleasurable, sukha in Sanskrit, as painful, dukkha in Sanskrit, or as neutral, upekkha in Sanskrit. And I want to quote a study that shows how this second skandha is influenced by the fourth skandha, our formation, associations, or impulses. There is this wonderful study I want to share with you. In the British documentary, The Secret Life of Babies by Bernard George, I came across a brilliant example how our conditioned mind works. In one fascinating series of tests, 2 babies, one exposed to rock music in the womb and the other to her mother's harp playing in the womb, were found to have a direct correlation in heart rate patterns to the music they heard in utero. Even after the infants were born, one preferred classical music, whereas the other showed positive reactions when rock music was played. When the wrong kind of music, the one they were not used to, was played to them, they started crying. The rock music baby cannot stand classical harp music and vice versa, crying because of harp music. So we can see that our mind will always stick to what it is used to and what it has been conditioned to like. Who doesn't like harp music? Or on the other side, who doesn't like rock music? And that's how we get to our habits, our patterns, what we like and what we don't like. And because we want to avoid pain, we avoid things we don't like. The idea is, or the theory is, that these patterns are located in the fourth skandha. They are always present in background mind and influence the second skandha in our perception. The fourth skandha, mental activity or formations or associations or impulses, in Sanskrit samskara, is made up of conditioned things or disposition mental imprints, our karmic tendencies. They are the things, they are latent and make us act and react in a certain way. Karmic in the sense that past experiences have led to certain behaviors and have become our unconscious behavior patterns. For example, we meet someone unknown and unconsciously, immediately, we have an opinion. Something we see reminds us to something, for example, a smell. I mentioned in the last talk that smell is the direct way to our darkness. I have a very easy example. Our former landlords had a dog called Astra. As soon as he smelled me, he started to bark and to be afraid. And we react in exactly the same way because of former experiences, painful or pleasant. We divide the world into good and evil, and our delusions becomes reality. The pattern and all its connections emerge and appear clearly in front of our inner eye. In this moment of realization, we can escape the illusion of our life, escape from the imagination of our life. But the fourth skandha is the gateway to our life. This skandha is the gateway to our deeper desire, to our cravings and desires. Rumi says, the wound is the place where the light enters you. Trust your wound to a teacher's surgery. Flies collect on a wound. They cover it. Those flies of your self-protecting feelings. Your love for what you think is yours. Let a teacher wave away the flies and put a plaster on the wound. Don't turn your head. Keep looking at the bandaged place. That's where the light enters you. And don't believe for a moment that you're healing yourself. I think most of you know who is Rumi. He has been described as the most popular poet and the best-selling poet in the United States, says Wikipedia. Rumi was a 13th century Persian poet and Sufi mystic. He has been popular for many centuries all over the world. My first direct teacher, Rutan Rosenblum, quotes Rumi very often. His wife, Jean, is a senior teacher at Ritwan School, founded by A.H. Almaz. And in this school, Rumi is important. And Rutan and his wife went on retreats there every year. So this is how Rumi comes into my practice. And again, don't turn your head. Keep looking at the bandaged place. That's where the light enters you. This is our practice in Sazen. We let everything that comes up arises and let it go. We don't only open our hand of thoughts. This means we also open our hand of feelings, of our fears, hatred, anger, our grief. We open our hand of what is called the kleshas. They are one of the 6 classes of consciousness in the Abhidharma. And again, the kleshas are categorized in 6 classes and 20 other classes. We love lists. Klesha in Sanskrit translated to defilements. In Pali Kilesha, it is also called passions clouding the mind. These are strong emotions such as aggression, greed, ignorance, jealousy, arrogance, pride, and everything that results from them. Nowadays, they are also called neurosis. And Shantideva calls them entanglement, entangled emotions. In a sense, kleshas are a dynamic, elusive energy, but an energy that easily enslaves us and causes us to speak and act in a less than intellectual manner. Greed, hatred, and delusions are the basic kleshas, says Edward Conze. It is also said that the kleshas are impurity and the obstacle of purification. And this is the main theme in Visuddhimaggas, the text, the path of purification, an important part of the Abhidharma. There it says at the very beginning, distangle the tangle. We find intimacy in the unknown and follow the threads of our tangle, thus unfolding our own entangled stories, trusting completely in our bodily wisdom, and thus coming into contact with our suffering, not avoiding it, but penetrating it, transforming it, and thus learning to expand our own boundaries. By the way, the word sutra is literally translated as the thread. Bodhichitta is the counterpart to the kleshas. Body means awakening and chitta means mind, but more in a universal way like I talked last time. We have to consider that in yogic culture there is no distinction between mind and heart. And so when bodhicitta has arisen, the whole being is striving towards awakening. And when it is awakened, then it works all by itself. When you don't have to do anything. You only have to nourish it with practice. It nourishes itself from the universal connectedness of everything with everybody. We get caught by our emotions so quickly, and I want to bring up a practice instruction from Fukan Sasengi in Shobogenzo. It is said, hence, you should stop searching for phrases and chasing after words. Take the backward step and turn the light inward. Your body-mind is of itself will drop off and your original face will appear. If you want to attain just this, immediately practice just this. Like I explained in my third talk, the backward step can be an important phrase, and not only in Zazen, just like the term unhook from the Mountain and Water Sutra. We need to unhook our emotions, ideas and conceptions, to take all of this from the hook of ourself. In this way, we can learn to see the 5 skandhas as empty of our own being, as it is said in the Heart Sutra, and see how our consciousness arises. We shouldn't focus on our wrong ideas of consciousness, on what we think of our life, the 5th skandha. Instead, we need to focus on the process of how our consciousness arises, how the first sensation manifests into form, how to anticipate them, whether we experience them to be good, bad, or indifferent, dwelling in our body sensing, noticing what arises, putting it together is perception, and remaining aware of what we add from our karmic existence. Thus, we are discovering more and more our own inner emptiness, linked to the emptiness of the things that come at us from outside. We distangle the tangle more and more. And so, more and more, as we distangle the threads of our relationships to everything, we immerse in this world of permanent connectedness. We dwell in the threads that invisible connect us in Indra's net, and they become perceptible and we don't get caught anymore. Dongshan Liangxi, the founder of the Chaodong lineage, the forerunner of Soto Zen, says in the Song of the Jewel Miri Samadhi, "You are not it, but it is truth, it is you." I interpret Dongshan's phrase for me as, "It is me now, but I'm not it." Not knowing is nearest, it is said in the koan 20 at the Shohuroku, one of my favorite koans, my Shusu koan. Dwelling in not knowing, immersing and dwelling in a felt reality we cannot really grasp. Reliance in not reliance. Like I mentioned in one of my talks, finding trust when we open the bottom of the bucket and let ourselves fall. Trusting that there is something that will hold us. The word dharma also has the meaning of that which supports. Finding support in this, that which arises out of impermanence. Learning to be the melody of the dharma. In Chinese, there is a word for this. It's Wu Wei, a part of the larger concept Chuan, also called Siran. Siran, which translates to spontaneous or natural, or a more descriptive translation would be the event of the appearance, is an attempt to explain the origin, what is born, what is unborn. It is the ontological basis of Taoism, which later became mixed with Chan Buddhism. The diagram of concept of the 5 ranks from Dongshan Liangxi is also called Wu Wei. To explain these differences between Taoism and Chan Buddhism in more detail, I would have to open a big new topic. Besides, I also lack the more detailed knowledge to really explain it. Anyway, Wu Wei literally means doing nothing or selfless action. Wu Wei is sometimes mistranslated as non-action. In fact, it means no calculated action, nothing but spontaneous action, the kind of action we need to meet the demands of the passing moment. Zhuang Zhu, who along with Lao Tzu is considered the founder of Taoism, said, "The 10,000 things can only have Siran as their source. It is the selfless action, Wu Wei, that turns Siran into Siran. And Father, when you act selflessly Wu Wei, you are confident and act from the source." This maybe might clear up this misunderstanding of doing nothing and being good for nothing a little bit. It's just about a spontaneous, intuitive, natural way of acting without adding anything. All 4 embracing bodhisattva actions, and especially beneficial action, results from this understanding that the world is permanently connected to everything and everyone, and from the understanding of Wu Wei, which is inherent to us. And so 1 equals 0, and then equals infinity. My view of the world has changed a lot through this practice of closely observing my Skandhas and Vijnanas. When I talk about cutting my experienced world into thinner and thinner slices, I'm talking about cutting my thinking into thinner and thinner slices to find out how it is composed. This has little to do with cutting anything off, because I'm still separated. I'm in my dualistic view of the world. And the contrary, through these concentrations on the intuitive perception of the first 6 Vijnanas, as described in the last lecture, and my breathing, like I talked in my 3rd lecture, a new way of being in connection with the world arises. It is a tangible connection with the things that appear, a felt way of following the appearance of one's real threads of relationships with the world, a felt way of being in connection with the world. Thank you. So, if there are any questions or comments or anything else, please don't hesitate. Please.
I was very moved by what you said about the machines that what Descartes said, because Descartes always makes me shiver, because I've read that he dissected dogs and while they were alive, and all the whimpering and crying of the creatures he tortured to death, he said it's just not real pain, it's just a machine, it's like the creaking if you put metal things apart. And I will never be able to stop grieving and crying about such things in past, present and future. But I think what is the misconception you always taught about is that what he thinks, what is a machine, but what is a machine? Machine is a concept made by humans, because there are no machines in nature. And even our bodies are partly biological machines. Our fingernails grow even if we think about it or not. And so the beginning of your talk, when you said artificial intelligence, is it something that has consciousness, and can it have compassion, and can it have thinking beyond thinking? I'm not sure if I can understand this, why this is important, because we try, it's our approach. We are trying to be compassionate and respectful to other living beings, and to the pots in the kitchen, and to our laptop computers and our mobile phones, and yeah, we would be probably wise to be compassionate and respectful to an artificial intelligence. And even if it's a machine, it's a machine made from humans, because machines are always made from humans. There are no machines in nature, and when they are made with good intent to help others, then they are expression of compassion, I think. And so they are compassionate artificial intelligences if they are programmed to help others. Sorry, that was
No. I think this is very important, because and you are absolutely right. You know, I brought up Descartes because he is the base or the fundament of the Western modern philosophy now. I am because I'm thinking, yeah? And as you said, he was not really interested in feelings, in emotions, and what we are in whole as human beings, yeah? And but he is the fundament of all what is created the last centuries, yeah, and what is emphasized, yeah. And I don't want to give real an answer if AI or machines have consciousness or not, yeah. I only want to emphasize what is important, yeah, for us as human beings, and what are the differences between humans and machines, and there will be always a difference. And I'm not sure if we are not at the moment in this thinking that we forget this. You know, when I read the news and the newspapers, so all is about artificial intelligence, and it will take over again everything. Millions of jobs will be lost the next years, because artificial intelligence is so good and can really take over all work of human beings, mostly. And I think this can be very difficult, because this is a step in our society we really have to think about, and we really have to decide what we are doing here. Yeah? We have set so many things the last centuries into these societies, into the world. They are not really clear what is the outcome from them. For example, mobiles, internet, all the apps, yeah, and we are now living in a society where more than 70% of the people are lonesome. So why this all is happening? There are reasons for this, and I only want to bring this in discussion that we have to think about what we are doing here. So, and I think that a machine cannot really ersetzen, thank you, replace a human being, you know. A stroke from a human being on an old person in a retirement housing, for example, yeah, is much more than a machine can do when he strokes, you know. There is something we cannot really grasp in this stroking. There is something, I call this energy, I call this chi.
So when you were discussing Descartes, I mean, yeah, I'm disturbed with the dog thing too. It blows one of my favorite jokes that there's two different kinds of philosophers. Those who believe that animals have no souls, and then philosophers who have pets. However, Descartes tortured his dog, so that just blows that. Like Martin Heidegger said that machination is the end of philosophy.
Yeah.
And it's, well, once we, machinery is everything, and philosophy is nothing.
Yeah.
And but with respect to Descartes, he didn't really say that everything is reducible to machine. He said there were two substances, thinking and extended, right? So the extended substance is what he visualized as mechanical in nature. And his analytic geometry was an attempt to give measurement to the machinery of extended substance. But the thinking substance allegedly has free will and some kind of spirituality, connection to God. I mean, he did have a religious side to his thinking. He, in fact, was a Catholic. It was Hobbes who reduced everything to machinery. It was Hobbes who said that there is no soul, there is no spirituality, it's all reducible to mechanics. And so the German philosopher Leibniz responded to that, saying that there's a fallacy in reasoning when you suggest that consciousness is reducible to mechanical functioning, or what we would say today, the epiphenomena of consciousness is the emergent property of neurological activity. So that's a presupposition of modernity, which Leibniz basically shows a fallacy of logic there. It is, if I pop open your skull and look and say, all right, I don't see love or feelings or anything like that. You don't see a perception when you look inside of a person's brain. You see, maybe you see mechanical activity, but you don't see a perception. And so it is simply a leap of logic to suggest that you can reduce the functioning of consciousness to the mechanical apparatus of the brain. So that was Leibniz, and neuroscience hasn't caught up with Leibniz.
Thank you for your input. Yeah. But you know, I said or I emphasized Descartes because he is always quoted, you know, as the beginning. Yeah, and this philosophical discussions, yeah, are very big. Yeah, and I knew this article from Heidegger about technique, yeah, it's from the 50s or 60s, I think, yes. And there he said, this is really the end of our human being, yeah. You can, what we have here, you can read this in the 50s in his article. Maybe I had...
Question concerning technology, I think is the name of it.
Yeah. I think I should have quoted a few things out of this, yeah, because this can be very helpful, what I want to say. But anyway, yeah, it's a very big discussion, yeah, and good that you brought this in, yeah, and you know, I'm not a philosopher. I don't have all these knowledges where what a few people in here have. There are a few former philosophy professors here inside. So yeah, but I think this is really important, yeah, to bring this more in society and more in this medial conversations we have about, you know, we every day something new, fascinating about AI. For example, yesterday I read something from Ken Wilber and art and how it should be combined with artificial intelligence, and we generate new science and new artistic forms and so on. So it is so much power in this artificial intelligence thing, yeah? And I wonder often why. Because, you know, we are still human beings, we have suffering, yeah? We want to avoid it, we want to liberate it, and we have so much other really important things what we should discuss. For example, homelessness, yeah, growing of homelessness, you know, all over the world, yeah, and how we can build new communities to make a way out, yeah, and not about all this stuff about machines and computers.
But we long to be omnipotent.
Pardon?
But we long to be omnipotent. I don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah. Or arrogant.
Yes, that's...
Sorry. I'm not quite sure how it fits with all your... I guess... you know, I have a second thing. I was brought to tears when you spoke about eyeing the wound. And if you could say a little more about that. And now I'm thank you.
Yes. Yes, because I can say a lot of... I can say really... because this phrase or this quote was bringing me to tears when I read it the first time. Yeah, because it says don't avoid your sufferings and all your entanglements. You know, we are used, and especially in modern times with mobiles and all the entertainment, we don't look anymore to what we don't want, because our mobile can show us every time, every second, something what entertains us and what makes us happy, you know? This happiness thing is such a huge misunderstanding. What comes out, it's out of Buddhism, yeah? And that we always can be happy, and yeah, and I learned in my practice that I can find bliss when I really look into my wounds, this ugly, dirty, dark things that arises always in Sazen. And it will not stop. It is unbelievable. Yeah, yeah.
If I could add, as a nurse who's dressed
Sure.
thousands of
Yeah.
wounds, they can be beautiful also in the healing process, and they heal. And the term is, which I think is interesting now, is by intention. So they heal from with this little slippery cells sliding into place, into place, into place, into place, until they fill in.
Yeah.
If you're talking about a typical kind of wound.
Yeah.
that's
And
kind
also
of beautiful in
touching
itself.
them, like I told last time,
Yeah.
touching them is
Yeah.
also very important. And you can find studies that wounds heal much faster when you talk, when you touch, when you give compassion. Yeah. And there is this quote that comes up now. It's broken but whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we always want, you know, when you see, for example, I have to social medias, yeah. All faces look wonderful now, and there are algorithms. They make all the bad things, in especially woman faces, yeah, to wonderful and bright and shining, and yeah, and we don't want to see this whole stuff. Yeah, so I stop. Yeah, but look, yeah, don't look at your wounds. Yeah, look there and let it open. Yeah, and then they will heal in other way as you think. Are there any questions from Zoom?
We do have one question from Vienna.
For sure.
Yeah, of course. Hi.
Hello. Hi to Vienna.
So we heard a lot the last few Sundays about how we assemble, like all the Skandhas and the Vijnanas and everything. So you gave very detailed description of this. And there was always this metaphor of cutting it in slices, like, and the slices get thinner and thinner. And I wanted to ask again if you could give us maybe an example how this features in your Zazen, how it supports your Zazen, because it was, you know, a lot of theory, and maybe you could give us an example how it supports your Zazen.
Okay. I tried last time, I think, with the spider on the wall in front of my Zazen. I tried it, yeah, to give this as an example, how this arises and what is coming up in my mind, and how I get this assembling, or how first there comes the spider in my view, or first there is something I think moving in Zazen here, yeah. Oh, moving, something moving. Okay, so then my intention is awakened. And then the spider is coming into, oh, spider, and then a lot of old experiences. I don't know really from where they are coming, but I have respect for spiders. Now I would say I have respect. In former times I had really fear. Yeah, there is an old story from a holiday in Italy. My wife can tell this. Yeah. We was laying in bed, and then really a big spider comes on the wall. Yeah, out from something I don't know. And so I stand up and I put really everything what I have. Yeah, it had 40 degrees, it was Italy in summer. I put everything what I has, jeans, socks, shirts and sweater and also a hoodie, so that the spider can do me nothing, yeah. And then I don't know, it was a great book or something like this, and I killed the spider, yeah. And it was so ugly because it was all green on the wall for days. So I had really fear, and now this fear becomes to respect, you know, because now when the spider comes on the wall, I see my fear arising, and I let it be there. Sure, I don't throw it away and nothing happened. Yeah, but the fear comes. The fear comes in my background, in my Gewahrsein, in this awareness space. It is more in the background, and I try to really to stay in connection with the spider or the object. For example, the glass. It's maybe a better example. When I take the glass, I try now really to take it with both hands, and there are some sensations here. Here it is. I feel it is cold, and it is slippy a little bit. Yeah, and I bring it into my inner body space. Yeah. So I'm not really thinking what this is all. I try to bring it in my inner body space, and then I drink. And I try to be in these sensations, in this feeling of this glass, this water, and not this, this is a water, oh yes, yeah, it's American water, yeah. I miss my Viennese, and you have to know Viennese water is unbelievable because it comes, now really, it comes direct from the Alps, yeah. So I miss my Austrian Viennese water, yeah. So, but this all comes up, but it is not important for me. It is not that this is American water, you know. What I want to say is to stay in contact, yeah, in an intuitive contact with the things they appear, yeah. And you know, this appears in this moment. There is nothing in a way, yeah.
Yes, I know, but what I want to know,
yeah.
Let's go back to the spider, right?
Yeah.
So you see the spider crawling in. Do you say, oh, this is I consciousness, this is I object, this is list number 1, point number 4. Do you use this? All these categories that you brought up. And now when you drink the water, do you see, okay, this is the third skandha, or how does this feature in yours?
Yeah, okay, now I understand. Mm-hmm. Yeah, now yes. I understand. Now I understand, and maybe, Kuryo, afterwards, yeah, you can tell your skandha story. This can be very, very interesting for everybody here.
Maybe you can tell it.
Okay, I try. Yeah, so I think at the beginning of this kind of practice, I think I have done this. Yeah, not in this absolute way of tak. This is, you know, I don't make the lists. Yeah, but more in this this can be this. This can be this. Yeah, and to get closer to this framework, to this system of how the things fall together, or how they unfold, it's better, how they unfold and fold together, how this is coming together, you know, how the appearances out of this, let's say, alaya vijnana, everything is in, and I take now my attention to the glass. There is a glass. Okay, there is water. Thirst. Okay, and in this kind of appearances, yeah, not in this being in these dreams, more in this cutted way of appearances. And I think, yes, at the beginning I have made these distinctions. This could be, yeah, you know, this, learn how this is coming together. Yeah, I think so.
I'm asking because I had the experience for me that it can result in too much thinking on my part. You know, going through this, which one is it again? You know, and then
absolutely.
And then Yes, so
Yeah.
that's why I asked.
Yeah, but it is the way, like I talked at the end of my lecture, that this is the thinking part. It is this dualistic view of the world. You are already in this dualistic view, yeah, and to come more in this stream of the dharma, yeah, to come more in this feeling part of the world, in this being, now being and not thinking. Yeah, it is not so easy to explain, but it is more a felt being in this world. It is always together with my breath, and I learned with practicing this that my body is responding in a way, most of the time, with something, with some feelings. There are things I really don't want to talk about because maybe too esoteric. There are some experiences in my body, or there are some special moments in my body that some gateways opened, especially in my ears. You know, sometimes I have the feeling that maybe there are this big antenna for when you for observing deep space.
Right,
Yeah.
a telescope?
A telescope, thank you. A telescope, yes. And I have the feeling, especially my right ear, sometimes is a big telescope. And I cannot really explain, and I cannot really say what this feeling is. When I say not knowing is nearest, then these feelings appear. This is a kind of hearing more than it is said. Hearing between the words. Some feelings appear, some feelings come, and sure there are some distinguishes out of this, yeah. That is this hermeneutic experience of the world. Maybe it's a better word for this. You know what is, because that's why I talked so much about this space in between. We cannot really talk about. But there is this perception. This is here. And I'm sorry, but I don't want to talk about this experience because this supernatural, mystic can bring a lot of false ideas. Yeah. Also for me, so this is always to be on this. That's why it's so important that we have Hojo-san and Dogen and this clearness of our practice. But there is this other world. And this is always here. You only have to open this gate.
I just want to add this. I read something recently. It was I read a lot of poetry. And it was something like this, just this awesome, terrible beauty. And it's all that you can't describe.
Yeah.
No matter what you say.
Yeah. Poems sometimes can be very helpful. Yeah. To find words for this, what we cannot really talk about. So, and want you hear the Skandhas story from Koryu? You still want? You have time?
Go for it.
Okay. So, this is really funny because, we are sitting like here in the cellar, and there is also our heating nearby, and the tubes are running through our sendo, and yeah, and Suzanne is sitting, now choreo, yeah, is sitting in the sand, and suddenly a song comes into your mind, the Yellow Submarine. Comes into your mind. Na, 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 na. And she thought, what is happening here? Yeah, what is happening? And with the time, yeah, she get into this, and maybe this is also how to describe how what I want to say. She got into this from where this is coming up, yeah, and then she remembers as a child she was in, I think, in Japan or in Hawaii. Now she's coming, yeah.
In Pearl Harbor.
Huh? Pearl Harbor.
Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
And I went into a submarine. And there were all the pipes and the water running through the pipes. And this is why my mind made a connection between water running through pipes and submarines. So then I understood why this song came up in my head.
Yeah.
And I was able to stop the song and just listen to the water in the pipes as if the water was music. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a wonderful example for what I said. How to explore your arising from the consciousness.
So this is what we call going with the flow.
Yeah. No, I don't call it going with the. I don't call it going with the flow. Those are your words. I talk about the melody of the dharma.
Is there anyone else? Anyone else on Zoom?
No?
Shall we close?
Yes.